A new notice on the quest board. A band of musicians had disappeared after a long night regaling the Crimson Keep with their drinking songs, whether they wanted to be regaled or not. Rex, the band's front rat, would know more. The Crimson Keep was playing host to the traveling squirrel folk on their annual pilgrimage to the Bright Fir. They honored the young king with an invite to their Leaf's Fall Festival, the first outsider to be asked to this mysterious gathering in generations. Reggie was pleased to take some time away from battle to experience the wonder of the great golden woods. Rex the Bard looked nervous. He'd found the crypt gates open. No amount of fermented bug juice would see him go in, but his bandmates were not always so wise. The young king didn't hesitate. Reggie's head was pained from the drinking and the noise of last night, but he'd still found his bed. What had these young bards found? Several empty bug brew bottles littered the floor, a sure sign of bards. Reggie was getting closer. Amy had taken refuge by an old statue and was getting some much-needed shut-eye. Reggie only meant to wake the bard, but his shout awoke the zombified remains of Mausamoto Musashi. Mausamoto was a legendary swordmaster. Reggie hoped to get one more lesson before putting him to rest. Kusamoto when he was alive. But now, his dual blades had fallen silent forever. Reggie directed Amy to the Crimson Keep, glad to have found her safe. Seems Amy wasn't the only bard who hadn't reappeared. Rex still needed help. Amy was waiting with Rex. She'd remembered what they'd been looking for in the crypts. The Book of Immortal Song. Maybe Chetty Mercury was still searching the Hall of Books. The dream of music that lasts forever was worth the risk to these talented young bards. Pages from music books littered the ground, perhaps dropped in a hurry. Chetty must be near. But what had made this brave bard run? Reggie glimpsed Chetty running deeper into the crypts. Something had scared him. Something lurking in the shadows. Reggie caught up with the lost musician, but Chetty wasn't leaving without the Book of Immortal Song. Reggie had little choice but to help the bard. As soon as Reggie set paw in the Hall of Books, he knew something was wrong. Something in the shadows. A mouse. It was Fang Bu, an infamous warlord known for his brutality with the halberd. Fang Bu finally laid to rest, Chetty scooped up pages of the Book of Immortal Song. With a nod of thanks to Reggie, he scurried towards the surface. After all they'd been through, Reggie hoped the young bards gave a historic performance. More bards went missing, the Crimson Keep would fall silent. Reggie needed to speak to Rex and the other bards. The bards explained that Johnny Nasher had gone into the crypts to buy tobacco from Bertle the Turtle. There'd been no sign or sight of either of them since. Bard's pipe and tobacco pouch. Johnny would never have left them on purpose. As Reggie felled the last of the undead, Bertle appeared, calling for help. A young rat was under attack. Reggie and Bertle rushed to his homestead. Not a horde, but Crocus Khan. This fearsome Toad King rode his lizard steed into many a battle, but this would be his last. It's rumored that 1 in 8 frogs can trace their lineage to the great Crocus. But this old toad would sire no more. With Crocus defeated, Johnny and Bertle thanked Reggie for his help. Reggie hoped in the future they would find safer, less pungent places to trade. Reggie had dealt with the Grub Queen, nothing had disturbed the miners. But now, they whisper of a legendary giant. Reggie believed the Mudworm was a long-dead creature of rat-pup tales, made out to be giant, but only half the size of a cow grub. Reggie was wrong. These mudworms could eat the cow grub and still have expected today to go. Still, the head of a legendary mudworm to adorn his royal bedchamber would be no small reward. Grub King had been sighted in the mines, no doubt in search of his queen. Reggie wondered how best to break the news to him. Probably with a sword. The miners were evacuated on hearing the roars of the Grub King. Reggie wondered if it already knew. The beast was heading deeper into the mines, to his queen's lair. The miners wished their king luck. Reggie had to get to the bottom of the mines before the Grub King finds the queen's lair, and whatever might be left of her. Moles in the tunnels were not what Reggie expected to find here. They spoke about seeking materials for their rocket. It all sounded very confusing to Reggie. Reggie was shocked to find another mole, all alone in the mines. Seb, an engineer of the Bolshevik Republic, said he was waiting for Scrapper Team Alpha to return. Reggie had to find them before the Grub King does. Seb led them to the Scrapper's location. They had been harvesting materials from the corpse of the Grub Queen. If the Grub King saw them, they would be bug food. Too late. The Grub King had returned for the culprits, and found Reggie and Seb. The Scrapper team thanked Reggie for saving their lives, but were even more grateful to have a fresh corpse to butcher. Reggie sighed. He was just glad there were no more grubs. village elder has heard worrying news. The miners believe the Stalker Queen has reared her spiky head. Reggie agrees to investigate. When Reggie first arrived at the mine, he found a rat miner arguing with Seb the engineer. The mole wanted to head down into the mines to fix the tram, but the rat refused to let him enter for fear of the Stalker Queen. Reggie told the miner he would personally take Seb to the tram to repair it. Traversing the mine was hard work. The Stalker Queen had been busy. Her offspring spread to every corner. Seb was not used to this much fighting, and was glad to have Reggie by his side. Fighting next to Seb brought back bittersweet memories for Reggie. He was determined that Seb would not suffer the same fate as his old friend. The Stalker Queen and a fresh brood of eggs. Reggie swore this was a good for the tram late day. Together, Rat and Mole felled the Stalker Queen. Seb swore to get the tram working again, single-pawed, thanks for Reggie's help. Reggie was just happy to have made a new mole friend. Demolition rarely lost in the arena, but new challengers are always keen to try their luck. Mohammed Moli made a name for himself with his swift feet and swifter paws. But Reggie could roll like a hedgehog and pounce like a bat. This swift-pawed champion was as light-footed as any dancer of the Bolshevik ballet, but not nimble enough to overcome King Demolition. Reggie's renown in the arena brought challengers from every corner of the known ratdom. From the cold rivers of the north came the brutal Billy Von Dam. Beaver's bite wasn't enough to stop King Demolition. Reggie wondered if he gained any fans among the Beaver folk. The Grub Buster armor was Molekind's ingenious defense against even the most vicious grub bites. Reggie wondered how it would stand up to his sword. The Grub Buster suit didn't stand a chance against King Demolition and his trusty sword. Reggie wondered if the moles would make him a Frog Buster suit. Reggie was greeted by the squirrel guide Zazu at the forest edge. She'd been sent to show the king the way to the festival, a secret path known only by squirrel folk. The forest was not at all what the young king expected. He'd heard the bright fir's golden leaves bathed the entire forest in light. There'd been no mention of these giant mushrooms that made the air heavy with spores. The bright fir's golden light fell on the forest clearing and caravans like an enchantment. The mood, though, was not festive, but worried. Zazu, embarrassed, explained the reason they asked the brave young king here was to plead for his help. The Squirrel Elder and a priest of the Bright Fir journeyed to the abandoned Glimmer Mines to harvest bright moss, and had not returned. With the golden light of the camp behind him, Reggie headed back out into the gloom in search of the mines. Signs were not promising. Outside the Glimmer Mines were vicious beetles. What had driven them from their cave home? The squirrel folk were in more danger than they knew. The Squirrel Elder's walking cane, lying abandoned. If he didn't have it, Reggie wondered, how did he carry himself from this place? The rocks of the Glimmer Mines glowed with a blue light unlike anything Reggie had ever seen. Reggie wondered what the moles would make of this place. The Squirrel Elder's lifeless body lay on the floor. The priest at his side. Before Reggie could approach, he found out why they were trapped here. This was the nest of the Beetle Queen. The still body of the Squirrel Elder. The Squirrel Elder rose with a yelp. He'd been entranced from the ritual smoking of extra potent bright moss. Unaware, he almost became the Beetle Queen's snack. Thanking Reggie for the rescue, they headed back to begin the festival. This market stall sells all sorts of quality goods. A few coins spent here would spruce up the Crimson Keep nicely. the Squirrel Elder back at the Bright Fir with a tankard of bright sap in his paw, the festival of Leaf's Fall could finally begin. No sooner had the Elder raised his cup into the air to begin his opening speech, came the clattering of wood and smashing of glass. To everyone's horror, a drunken squirrel had knocked over the table with the bright sap. The festival of Leaf's Fall could not continue without the rare and sacred drink. The Squirrel Elder turned to Reggie, asking if the brave young king would again save their festival and venture into the shrine of the tapped root to collect more bright sap. In the maze of bright fir roots, the spores were so thick Reggie had to wear his gas mask. Was this infestation the reason the bright firs were dying? The shrine of the tapped root stood before him, but the root looked damaged. Before Reggie could wonder what had done this, he got his answer. A root worm, bloated and enraged by bright sap. Had been banished from these parts for generations. Reggie had a feeling its presence meant something was rotten in the state of bright fir. To Reggie's dismay, the tap was broken. Reggie did not look forward to returning to the Squirrel Elder with no sacred sap and news of rootworms. Though shocked at the news, the Squirrel Elder had an idea. The tap was one of several made in the basement woodsmith workshop of Castle Dray. Perhaps Reggie could look there. Approaching the ruins of Castle Dray, Reggie's whiskers twitched at the familiar stench on the breeze. He refused to believe it. After all he'd done to be rid of them, it could not be. The frog scourge had returned, a pestilence in the sacred forest that could not be allowed to spread. slapping of webbed feet from the basement. More pond filth waited below, and would soon feel his blade. The frog squatter was none other than General Hackhack, no better than a common thief loading supplies. The only thing he'd be taking today was his last breath. Satisfaction of the Frog General dead at his paws, Reggie found the replacement tap. The squirrels would have their secret sap. Reggie was surprised to find a mole in Bright Fir Forest. The mole was embarrassed. He'd got lost going from Station C-19 to Station 24-7. Reggie sympathized. Those tunnels were a tough route. Lost he may have been, but still enterprising. The mole had armor for sale, if the king had the coin. The mole had heard of this king of rats who traveled the underground, but never believed it was true. Perhaps Reggie knew the tunnels well enough to give him directions. The king barely noticed the journey back to the Bright Fir, dwelling as he was on the return of frog spawn to the ratdom. Where there's a general, an army must be close by. Reggie handed over the tap, but wished he could spare the old squirrel the pain of hearing frogs were in Castle Dray. The squirrel elder could not allow the festival to continue, knowing pond scum squatted in their ancestral home. Reggie did not need to be asked. He knew what needed to be done. Reggie could not believe the frogs had returned after all he had done to be rid of them. Pond scum never learn. As Reggie made his way towards the ruins of Castle Dray, the stench of pond scum once again drifted in on the cool breeze. The familiar scent made him wonder why the frogs had suddenly reappeared in the ratdom. He'd heard tales of the great Castle Dray from his father's whiskers, but it was hard to believe this mushroom-pocked ruin was ever that once proud place. The evil frog spawn had been looting. These frogs believed they could make the central tower a new base, but Reggie would show just how wrong they were. The central tower. Whoever was collecting all these supplies would surely be at the top. The young king had thought his lust for revenge was sated, but he would not be satisfied until every frog in his kingdom had croaked their last. A strange crunch beneath his paws. Reggie looked down to see seeds on the floor. Jars of golden bright fir seeds were all around, enough to plant 100 forests. Reggie wondered if the squirrel elder knew they were here. Seems he wasn't the only one here for vengeance. Shield Maiden Yellowtongue was waiting, screaming the name of her fallen brother, War Chief Greenward. Castle Dray was returned to peace. There was a shrine in the room, carved figures of Reggie and his enemies in Bright Fir Forest. The frogs had planned it all to lure him here. The squirrels at the Bright Fir rejoiced to hear Castle Dray was back to its somber state of peace once more. The Squirrel Elder could start the Leaf Fall Festival at last. Reggie basked in the joy of the squirrel folk, as warming as the golden light of the firs. He reclined in his chair and was honored with a cup of bright sap. Being king has its perks. The pilgrimage to Bright Fir was not an easy wagon ride. This family's wagon wheel broke in the mud. They offered a reward if Reggie could find them a replacement. With a new wheel in paw, the wagon would be on its way. Reggie assured them they'd not missed the festival as there'd been a few minor delays. had asked the king to meet the bards in the cellar, he had a grand vision for the Crimson Keep's dark storeroom. Rex's plan was to convert the dank cellar into a bustling pub, if some rat could gather the materials. Reggie was happy to find what they needed. If for no other reason, then it may stop so many bards disappearing into the crypts. The trader was relieved to hear the bards had a trade to fall back on for when this musician fantasy inevitably failed, so he offered a good price. Having the necessary materials, Reggie handed them over to Rex and the bards. Reggie wondered if they had even a basic understanding of construction. Reggie could see himself spending many a night in The King's Tale, basking in the music, sipping red berry wine, and regaling